The coronavirus outbreak in China continues.
Wuhan, China, now under lockdown.
And tonight, that first case here in the U.S.
The most active hotspot right now is Italy.
The World Health Organization declaring COVID-19 a pandemic.
I think this has been a wake-up call to the world.
Our healthcare system was not prepared.
New York State now has more reported coronavirus cases than any country in the world.
It had a hold within our country, and it spread much faster than I think some anticipated.
The death toll continues to rise.
The world surpassing 1 million deaths from the coronavirus.
Globally, the death toll has now topped a staggering 3 million people.
This is sort of a collective trauma that's been ongoing now without a definite end in sight.
29 states are reporting an increase in new cases.
Nobody can solve this problem alone.
IEEE was interested in this because technology has a central role to play in COVID-19.
As a biomedical engineer, you're always looking for ways to make impact on healthcare and patients.
I think it's important to convey to almost every community, whether technical or the general public, all the progress that has been made and what the issues are.
It's really about really understanding what is the essence of the problem and how can we help with our tools in our hands to be part of the solution. We are looking at numbers like 10 million tests per day for a full safe reopening at schools, in nursing homes, in churches, for example, but also on the workforce reopening side. We need to have massive testing capacities throughout 2022. Usually when we have a point-of-care device, it does only one thing. That means it may do only PCR or only immunoassays or only clinical chemistry. Fluxology has a multimodal point-of-care device. For COVID-19 specifically, we picked a very interesting panel to look at, which is the combination of PCR and antibody testing on the very same test card. PCR has a turnaround time of about 50 to 55 minutes. And that's a real-time PCR comparable to what you have in the central lab, which are a couple of days.
Our COVID test platform is intended for at-home use. Basically, we could analyze our blood or saliva sample within 10 minutes. We could get 3 different aspects of information: current infection, immunity, and severity of the infections.
Tirona is a company that focuses on medical image analysis. We analyze them with AI and we focus mostly on the lungs, so CT scans of the lungs. PCR testing was at that time not widely available and also took too long to make quick decisions. They were starting to use imaging to see if someone had COVID and how serious. And then we realized, hey, this is all new. Radiologists suddenly have to read all these images. We can help by implementing AI to just tell them what we see with AI on the image. As an AI company, normally one of your biggest challenges is getting the data to make your product. We had the partners that were in the clinical front line. They shared data with us. They read scans for us saying this is what this looks like. So that's when we realized we can really make a product on top of our existing product. The software determines, are there any lesions in the lungs that are suspected of COVID-19? And if so, how many and where? And the software performs the same as a radiologist.
My lab has developed an ultra-sensitive platform that's able to detect very tiny amounts of both the proteins that the virus produces as well as the antibodies that the infected individual produces to fight off the virus. We developed about 10 years ago a technology that we call single molecule arrays, which is a technology that allows us to capture individual protein molecules and count them digitally. So imagine looking at the stars. Wherever you see a star, that's a signal, and so we can easily distinguish individual molecules. We're hoping to be able to use this blood test to detect patients who are at risk much earlier so that we potentially could intervene and have a better clinical outcome so that they don't end up in intensive care.
Our involvement grew out of some efforts that we had previously around devices to monitor speech and swallowing behaviors in stroke survivors. And it turned out that those devices could be easily adapted and tailored to the key symptoms associated with COVID-19. It's kind of like a Band-Aid. It's a battery-based Bluetooth wireless device that mounts on a special part of the anatomy known as the suprasternal notch. That position on the body turns out to be almost perfect for tracking the key symptoms of the disease: fever, shortness of breath, and cough. And if you couple those data streams with machine learning algorithms, you can develop a pretty comprehensive status evaluation of an individual patient. If you're not in the ICU, you're not being continuously monitored, like why not? I mean, that's well within the realm of what technology can support these days.
We want to create this early warning platform for viral illness that can supplement traditional surveillance streams, which are often delayed. Using wearable data and being able to identify each individual's normal allows us to identify kind of these subtle changes that may not have been picked up when we rely on population averages to do potentially a better job of identifying individuals who are potentially infectious or have COVID who should stay at home and get tested. So My Data Helps is a research app, and within it is our Detect Health Study. And I would love to encourage viewers to download My Data Helps and share their wearable data if they have a fitness tracker.
If you're walking around and you are within a proximity of a COVID positive person, automated exposure notification could play a key role with contact tracing. What Lincoln Lab has done is to look at the framework of how could that be used. How could you do that in a way that could mimic all of the normal everyday occurrences where two cell phones aren't right next to each other. Maybe they're in a pocket or in a shirt or a jacket or in a backpack. And so we got a bunch of different mannequins that could move around on autonomous ground vehicles. And then we could try out the Bluetooth proximity scenarios. Beyond that, we had to look at the security and cybersecurity for all of these scenarios, completely privacy preserving, just saying you have been in proximity of a potential COVID positive case.
Hi-Fi Bio is a biologic therapeutic company, and we apply our unique single-cell technology in combination of a deep understanding of immune modulation. Patients after viral infection produce the effective antibody to fight the virus. We try to identify the most effective antibody because different people have different responses. So using droplet, you capture each individual B cells. Within a second, we can produce 5,000 to 10,000 droplets. Within a short period, you can looking at many cells exposed to that specific immune antigen. Then you can identify antibodies of your interest. Then leverage that effective one for patients across different countries. From this kind of effort, we go further engineering it to make it become an effective drug to treat the patients already got infected by the SARS-CoV-2.
The ultimate goal of a vaccine is to present to the body a protein that resembles a piece of the pathogen, in this case, the spike protein of the coronavirus.
We've known probably for about 60 years that messenger RNA could potentially be a way to deliver proteins. It actually took that long to really develop the mechanism to be able to deliver the messenger RNA into the cells. And in fact, we deliver the messenger RNA with a lipid nanoparticle that ensures that that messenger RNA isn't broken down by body's natural mechanisms. We're delivering the messenger RNA directly into the cytosol, and The ribosomes then translate that delivered messenger RNA sequence to create a protein that's expressed on the surface of the cell.
For a real global health vaccine to be deployed for COVID-19, you have to balance the portfolio. Some may be novel, innovative technologies, but some should be bread and butter technologies.
With the variants emerging, I think there's a question about, do we need to think about continuing vaccination against this pathogen? And I suppose time will tell. But our idea is that SARS-CoV-2 vaccines could become like influenza vaccines, where good epidemiology is tracking what's happening in real time, and then we're able to put the relevant sequence into the vaccine before people would need it.
There are people who are, experiencing a lot of symptoms of anxiety and depression, symptoms of post-traumatic stress. For a lot of people, there's going to be, I think, a very long tail on the impact of COVID-19, even if they did not personally have COVID-19. And so we started working on creating a mental health resource. COVID Coach is not a treatment. It's not a way to diagnose anything, but it may be an important first step in people understanding that there is a problem and finding ways that they can connect with resources.
Usually, researchers work in their labs and the clinicians work in the clinic, but in this case, the researchers really didn't know where to start until they heard from the clinicians what the issues were.
As an engineer, you can't be working in isolation. You really have to be embedded in the medical community and listening to what they need.
So the role that IEEE can play is to bring disparate groups together to solve a complex problem that requires different disciplines.
The IEEE Grand Challenges Forum about COVID-19 was for me a great experience to listen to great thought leaders.
We decided to organize the COVID-19 Forum to increase the public awareness and also encourage the colleagues to collaborate and promote the innovative technologies in combating the COVID-19 virus.
We want to let people know what we're doing because others might have great ideas that they can layer on top of the things that we've done.
The draw was undeniable because among IEEE grand challenges, this is one that will define a generation.
The IEEE membership has expertise to be able to help address many of the critical problems, from devices through diagnostics, therapeutics, and the data and analytics aspects, many of which are right in the sweet spot of the membership.
The technology itself won't solve the problem without people coming together to use it to its greatest effect.
This is probably the quickest ever I made a drug from the beginning all the way to bring to the clinical trials.
If we had done things the way we had always done them in the past, I don't think we'd be at a place right now where millions of people have been able to be vaccinated.
We learned indeed that with working together, we have so much power. We can move so quickly.
We found ways to accelerate our learning and our willingness to take some risks in developing new technologies that we never would have before. And for that, I'm really thankful.
We will prevail, but it will take time.
I think the most important lesson is that we are all a global community. Anything that impacts some of us will ultimately impact all of us.
I think there's still a lot of work that we need to do to understand more and more how this virus not only behaves in nature, but also how it's looking to look for its survival within us humans as hosts.